Matthew chapter 14. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the report about Jesus. "This is John the Baptist," he told his servants. "He has been raised from the dead, and that's why supernatural powers are at work in him." When Herod had arrested John, chained him, and put him in prison on account of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, since John had been telling him, "It is not lawful for you to have her," though he wanted to kill him, he feared the crowd, since they regarded him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday celebration came, Herodias' daughter danced before him and pleased him. So he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked, and, prompted by her mother, she answered, "Give me John the Baptist's head on a platter." Although the king regretted it, he commanded that it be granted because his oaths and his guests. So he sent orders and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, who carried it to her mother. Then his disciples came, removed the corpse, buried it, and went and reported to Jesus. Verse 13. When Jesus heard about it, he withdrew from there by boat to a remote place to be alone. When the crowds heard this, they followed him on foot from the towns. As he stepped ashore, he saw a huge crowd, felt compassion for them, and healed their sick. When evening came, the disciples approached him and said, "This place is a wilderness, and it's already late. Send the crowds away so that they can go into the village and buy food for themselves." "They don't need to go away," Jesus told them. "You give them something to eat." "But we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish here," they said to him. "Bring them to me," he said. Then he commanded the crowds to sit down on the grass. He took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed them. He broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. Everyone ate and was filled. Then they picked up 12 baskets full of leftovers. Now those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Verse 22. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. After dismissing the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already about a mile from the land, battered by the waves, because the wind was against them. Around 3 a.m, he came toward them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It's a ghost!" they said, as they cried out in fear. Immediately Jesus spoke to them. "Have courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it is you," Peter answered him, "command me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. And climbing out of the boat, Peter started walking on the water and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught hold of him, and said to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those in the boat worshipped him and said, "Truly you are the Son of God." Once they crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. When the men of that place recognized him, they alerted the whole vicinity and brought him all who were sick. They were begging him that they might only touch the tassel of his robe, and as many as touched it were made perfectly well. Looking at Matthew chapter 14 in a commentary perspective, there are a couple things that we should be able to see within this passage, and I kind of want to skip over the John the Baptist beheading as much as we could speak about the portion of oaths and the importance of oaths to God's people, and really should be to us. We'll kind of skip that for this moment, and we'll come back to it at a later time. But what we should jump into is the feeding of the 5,000. There's a couple things that need to be talked about, specifically that Jesus withdrew from there by boat and to a remote place to be alone after being hearing about John the Baptist being beheaded. And as soon as he steps off of the boat, he had the intent of being alone in this remote place. He's met by a crowd of people, and having compassion on them, not pushing them away or turning them away. He recognizes that they're going to need to eat, right? And he needs to be able to feed them spiritually, but he needs to be able to feed them physically as well. So, not having much, he has 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and he's able to then miraculously, by the power of God, feed 5,000 men besides the women and the children that are there. With this, we need to be able to see first that when Jesus is praying, he's looking up to heaven. I know today's modern culture, modern Christianity, we bow our heads and we close our eyes. And I think that it's a very beautiful thing when there's a lot of distractions around us, right? We're able to bow our heads and close our eyes so that we don't get distracted by the things of this world. But I think it is important to note that Christ looked up to heaven, so he had his head up and his eyes open when he was blessing his food, blessing this food for the people. He broke the loaves and he gave them to his disciples, and then the disciples then had to carry it to the crowds. So it's this act of faith every single time that the disciples come back to Christ to be able to feed somebody. They have to remember he only had 5 loaves and 2 fishes. How is he still giving food to 50s and hundreds that are sitting here, and how are these people still being satisfied, right? That their faith is being tested every time they come back, and being satisfied every time they see from Christ. Their faith is strengthened every time they see a new plate, right? And they bring this food back. And as soon as everyone has eaten, there's 12 baskets full of leftovers. And those who ate are 5,000 men besides their women and children. Now, 5,000 men, we can easily assume, have at least one wife. This is the land of Israel. These are the people of God. They're able to be polygamous people. So these men are able to have more than one wife, and with that have more than 2 children. Right? We've got to have this understanding that these men probably had 4 to 6 children with them, if not more, amongst if they had multiple wives, right? If they only had one wife, they probably had 4 to 6 children. So this is 5,000 men, 5,000 women, plus another 20,000 kids that are being fed. The number here is massive, and even if we wanted to diminish that or take away from that, 5,000 men is still a lot to feed with 5 loaves and 2 fish, even if there was only 2 women and 2 children. But we'll digress from there. Peter walking on water is absolutely amazing. We see that he not only is terrified because he thinks a ghost is walking on water or walking towards them, which really should tell you the thought of the culture of that day, or the men of that day, or the spirituality of the men of that day, that they believed in ghosts. They knew that ghosts were real. God talks about ghosts throughout the Old Testament, that people shouldn't associate with the dead, that this is actually a real practice. So we should pay attention and note that. Peter thinks Christ is a legitimate ghost or a phantom on the waters. And they all cry out in fear. It's not just Peter. It's all of them. They cry out in fear. But Peter is the one who says, Lord, he's brave enough to say, Lord, if it's you, call me out to the water. And Christ does, so Peter gets out of the boat. Not only is he talking to a ghost who he first thought of as a ghost, but now he's able to get out of the water, put his feet on top of water, and then start walking towards Christ. Now, we've got to be astounded by this because Peter is a normal man. I mean, so is Christ. Christ is fully human, being able to walk on water, but Christ is without sin, without flaw, without um, defects, right? But Peter is a normal guy like us, born from the seed of Adam, and he's walking on water. And it's only whenever he sees the strength of the wind, which he's already recognized from inside the boat, but now he's outside of the boat and he sees that the winds are even stronger, that he gets afraid. He begins to sink and he cries out to the Lord to save him. And of course, God is faithful to save him. But he does get rebuked. Peter does get rebuked by Christ when he walks on the water. It's not Christ just saying, hey, great job, you walked on water, Peter, for a little bit. No, Peter got rebuked. You of little faith, why did you doubt? And it's this idea of like, you could have came all the way to me, we could have talked, we could have hugged, we could have whatever, and then we could have walked back together. But you had so little faith. Why? Why did you doubt? And this isn't a scolding or like a, hey, I'm so disgusted by you that I never want to see you again. That's not the heart that Christ says this, but Christ does say, why did you doubt? Like he does bring it to Peter's attention. He does rebuke Peter to say, hey, you don't need to doubt me. You're having a little faith right here. So we should really be able to take that to heart and know that when Christ is calling us out of the water, calling us to live according to his will, according to his purpose, we don't need to doubt. We don't need to waver in our faith.